She had never gone on a blind date before. The very thought made her heart pound harder than it should. Her name was Amina. She lived a simple life, one paycheck to the next, and had little time for luxuries. Her friend had insisted she meet someone, saying he was kind and decent. Amina agreed only because she was tired of being alone. That evening, she stepped into a small cafe, her dress plain but neat, her shoes slightly worn from too many walks to work. She clutched her handbag and scanned the tables. Her friend had told her to look for a man in a dark blazer. And there he was, or so she thought. A tall man sat alone, a blazer folded neatly on the chair beside him. He looked composed, sipping coffee as if he had all the time in the world. Amina's throat went dry. She hesitated, then forced herself forward. "Hello," she said softly, sitting down before her courage faded. The man looked up, surprised. His eyes were calm, curious, but not unkind. "You must be here for the date," she added quickly, cheeks warming with nervousness. He studied her for a moment. Then slowly he smiled. "Yes, I suppose I am." Relief washed over her. She didn't know she had sat at the wrong table. The air between them felt calm, unhurried. The clinking of cups, the faint chatter of other guests, the soft glow of lamps. It was all background to this strange beginning. Amina folded her hands, wishing they wouldn't tremble. She had expected awkwardness, maybe silence, but instead she felt a sense of ease she couldn't explain. He leaned back slightly, his posture relaxed. "So, tell me about yourself." His voice was steady, deeper than she expected, and so she spoke. About her small apartment, her long hours at the store, her little dreams that seemed too big for her small life. She thought he might grow bored, yet he listened, his gaze never leaving hers. Amina didn't know that her real blind date was sitting across the room, waiting, confused, for a girl who would never come. But here, at this wrong table, something unexpected had begun. Amina had not expected the conversation to flow so easily. She was used to people brushing her aside, nodding without listening, or changing the subject when she spoke of her small life. Yet this man did not interrupt her. He leaned forward slightly as though her every word mattered. The warmth of his attention unsettled her. She lowered her eyes. "I know it isn't very interesting. I just work at the corner store. Long hours. Not much else to say." He rested his chin on his hand. "Work is honest. That's more than most can say." His words made her blink. No one had ever said something like that to her. Amina wrapped her fingers around her cup, trying to steady herself. She felt the faint heat seep into her skin, grounding her. "What about you?" she asked at last. "What do you do?" The question lingered in the air. He paused as if weighing his answer. Then he said, "I handle business matters. Different kinds, really." His tone was casual, but his eyes hinted at something more. Amina didn't press. She didn't want to seem nosy. Instead, she laughed nervously. "Sounds important. Sometimes. But I'd rather talk about you." Her cheeks grew warm again. She sipped her tea, hoping he wouldn't notice. In truth, Amina felt out of place. The cafe was charming, yes, but she could feel the difference between them. His blazer, though simple, looked expensive. His watch caught the light in a quiet, polished way. Even his calmness carried a kind of quiet confidence she didn't understand. She thought of her own shoes worn thin, of the bills waiting on her small kitchen counter, of the way she had borrowed a dress from her cousin just to look presentable. This man, she thought, belonged to another world. And yet he stayed. He listened. He even smiled at her little stories. The sound of rain began tapping gently on the windows. The cafe grew quieter as the night deepened, the chatter fading until only a few tables remained occupied. "You know," he said softly, "you seem different." Amina tilted her head. "Different?" "Yes, most people rush to impress. But you speak honestly. I like that." Her heart skipped a beat. She looked away, embarrassed. She had never thought of herself as someone worth noticing. "Maybe because I have nothing to hide," she said quietly. "Maybe that's what makes it rare." For a moment, their eyes met. Something unspoken passed between them, fragile yet undeniable. But Amina shook the thought away. This was just a blind date, nothing more. She would return to her small apartment, her long shifts, her ordinary life. Still, she could not ignore the way his words lingered, like soft echoes she could not silence. She smiled faintly, more to herself than to him. Well, I'm glad I sat at this table. He returned the smile, though his eyes carried a knowing glimmer. I'm glad, too. Neither of them realized how much this mistake would change their lives. The evening had settled into a gentle rhythm. Amina found herself forgetting the world outside. She had begun to laugh softly, a sound she rarely heard from her own lips. But then the cafe door opened. A tall man stepped in, holding a small bouquet of flowers. He looked around expectantly, searching each table with a hopeful gaze. His tie was crooked, his shoes polished a little too brightly. Amina's smile faltered. Her breath caught. Her friend's words echoed in her mind. He'll be in a blazer waiting at the cafe. Don't worry, you'll recognize him. She stared, her hands frozen around her cup. That man? He also wore a blazer. Her heart sank. She turned back to the one sitting across from her. His calm eyes met hers. He seemed to read her thoughts even before she spoke. I think, she whispered, I sat at the wrong table. A pause. The air grew still. He didn't deny it. He didn't laugh. He only nodded as if he had known all along. You did, he said softly. Shame burned in her cheeks. She wanted to disappear, to shrink into the wooden chair. I'm so sorry, she stammered. I didn't mean, I thought. He raised a hand gently, silencing her. Don't apologize. I didn't mind. His calmness unsettled her even more. He had let her talk, let her believe, and never corrected her. Why? The man with the flowers finally spotted someone and walked to another corner where a woman waved timidly. Amina's heart pounded harder. I should go, she said quickly, reaching for her bag. But his voice stopped her. Stay. It was not commanding, but steady. A quiet plea hidden beneath restraint. Amina hesitated. Her instincts told her to run, but her heart urged her to listen. She sat back down slowly. Why didn't you say anything? She asked, her voice barely audible. He leaned back, studying her carefully. Because sometimes mistakes are worth keeping. Her eyes widened. His words struck her in a way she could not explain. The world outside the cafe blurred. The rain continued its quiet tapping. The smell of coffee lingered in the air. And Amina, caught between embarrassment and something new, found herself unable to move away. The mistake had already bound them, even if only for this night. The silence between them stretched, yet it did not feel empty. Amina shifted in her chair, her hands tightening around the strap of her bag. She should leave. She knew it. Yet something rooted her there. He broke the quiet. Do you regret sitting here? She looked up, startled. His eyes were steady, waiting. She shook her head slowly. No, I don't. His lips curved into the faintest smile. That admission surprised her. Why didn't she regret it? Perhaps because for once, someone had listened to her without judgment. Perhaps because his gaze made her feel seen in a way no one else had. Still, doubt gnawed at her. You seem different, she said hesitantly. Not like the people I usually meet. In what way? You don't make me feel small. Her voice trembled as she said it. But it was true. All her life, she had been made to feel lesser. By her employers, by strangers, sometimes even by her own family. Yet here was a man who spoke to her as though her words mattered. He leaned forward, his tone softer. Maybe that's because you're not small. You just don't realize it. Her breath caught. She looked away, the rain-streaked window blurring her vision. The cafe was nearly empty now, only a few tables scattered with late-night readers. The clock ticked quietly on the wall. Why are you here tonight? She asked, her curiosity breaking through her nerves. His answer came after a pause. I wanted to see what would happen if I stopped living by rules for once. She frowned. Rules? Yes, rules of business. Rules of family expectations. Rules of who I'm supposed to be. The words hung heavy in the air. Amina felt a chill, as though she had glimpsed a part of him hidden behind a closed door. He changed the subject gently. And you? Why did you come? Her laugh was soft, almost self-mocking. Because I was tired of being alone. His expression softened. For the first time, he looked almost vulnerable. Maybe that's something we both share, he said quietly. Amina's heart stirred. For a long while, they simply sat there, letting the rain and the dim lights wrap around them. Strangers, yet no longer strangers. Bound by a mistake that no longer felt like one. The night grew late. The cafe owner began wiping down the counters, preparing to close. Yet Amina and the man remained, locked in a quiet world of their own. She had grown comfortable with him, almost forgetting her earlier embarrassment. But a question pressed at her heart, heavy and insistent. "Can I ask you something?" she said softly. He nodded. "Why did you let me sit here? Why spend hours with a stranger who mistook you for someone else?" For the first time, his calm expression shifted. His eyes lowered, as though he searched for the right words. "Because," he said slowly, "I don't often get to be just a man." Amina frowned, puzzled. "What do you mean?" He met her gaze, and his voice deepened with honesty. "My name is Zayn. I run a business, a very large one. People treat me differently when they know who I am. They flatter. They pretend. They only see what I can give them, not who I am." The words sank in. Amina's breath caught. "A business?" she repeated, her voice faint. He gave a short nod. "I'm not just someone with a simple job. I've been called a millionaire. Some even say more. But tonight, for the first time in a long time, someone sat with me without knowing. And you didn't try to impress me, you just spoke. Honestly, that is rare." Amina's hands trembled in her lap. She could barely grasp what he was saying. "A millionaire? This calm, gentle man?" She shook her head. "That can't be true." His eyes held steady. "It is." The air grew thick with silence. The rain outside softened as though listening. Her thoughts raced. She remembered his watch, his blazer, his composure. The signs were there, but she had been blind to them. "You should have told me," she whispered. He smiled faintly, a sadness in his eyes. "Would you have stayed?" Her heart faltered. She didn't know the answer. 1,000 fears rose in her chest. What could she possibly offer a man like him? She lived paycheck to paycheck, saving coins in a jar for rent. She borrowed clothes to look decent. She had nothing to give but herself. "I don't belong in your world," she said finally, her voice cracking. Zayn leaned forward, his gaze intense but kind. "That's where you're wrong. My world is full of people who pretend. Tonight, I sat across from someone real. Do you know how rare that is?" Her eyes burned. She looked down, afraid he would see the tears forming. He reached across the table, not to touch, but to bridge the space between them. His voice softened. "I don't want wealth to decide who I can share a table with. I want honesty, and tonight I found it." Amina swallowed hard. Part of her wanted to flee, to hide from the weight of his words. But another part, deeper and stronger, wanted to believe him. The cafe owner announced last call. Cups were cleared, chairs stacked. The night had reached its end. Yet for Amina and Zayn, something had only begun. They stepped out of the cafe together. The rain had softened into a drizzle, misting the quiet street. Amina pulled a small umbrella from her bag, worn but sturdy. She opened it quickly. "Here," she said, lifting it above them. Zayn chuckled softly. "You didn't need to." "You'd be soaked otherwise," she replied, almost defensive. So they walked together, shoulder to shoulder, beneath the small circle of shelter the umbrella offered. The night was hushed, broken only by the rhythm of raindrops and the distant hum of traffic. Amina's thoughts swirled. Part of her still struggled to accept what she had learned. He was wealthy beyond imagination. She was a poor shopgirl. Their worlds could not be more different. And yet, when she glanced at him, he did not look like a millionaire. He looked like the man who had listened to her stories, who had smiled at her honesty, who had asked her to stay. She found her voice at last. "I don't know what to say." "Then don't," he answered gently. "Just walk with me." They moved in silence for a while, their steps in rhythm. Finally, Amina stopped. Her heart pounded as she turned to face him. "This doesn't make sense. People like you don't end up with people like me." His gaze softened. He stepped closer, careful, his voice steady. "Maybe that's why it makes sense. I don't want someone like everyone else. I want someone who sat at the wrong table and made it the right one." Her breath hitched. The streetlight above cast a faint glow, catching the raindrops in her hair. "You don't understand," she whispered. I don't have anything to give you. Zayan shook his head. You gave me honesty. Do you know how valuable that is? You gave me something I can't buy. Tears welled in her eyes. She looked down, ashamed of how easily her heart swayed. But his words reached deeper than her fears. Slowly, she nodded. They continued walking, the umbrella tilting slightly as she adjusted it to keep him dry. The gesture was small, but it spoke louder than words. Zayan glanced at her, his lips curving into a quiet smile. By the time they reached the end of the street, Amina realized something. This night had begun as a mistake, yet it had given her more than she had ever hoped. Not riches, not promises, but the possibility of being seen, truly seen, by someone who mattered. The drizzle faded, leaving the air fresh and clean. The world seemed lighter. Zayan stopped, turning to her once more. His voice was calm, almost tentative. Would you meet me again? Her heart skipped. She looked into his eyes, searching for doubt, for insincerity. She found none. A soft smile touched her lips. Yes, I will. And in that quiet moment, under the dim streetlight, they both knew something had begun. Something fragile yet strong enough to grow. A mistake had led her to him. But her choice, her brave, trembling choice, was what would keep them together.